I still hear their laughter in my dreams. Not the soft kind that fills a room with warmth, but the sharp, cold kind that cuts straight through your chest and leaves you standing there empty. It was a rainy Tuesday afternoon when my world finally cracked open, and the people who were supposed to catch me just stood back and watched it fall. My name is Alina, and for most of my life, I believed family meant safety. I grew up in a modest house on the edge of a quiet town, the middle child between an older brother who always knew how to charm everyone and a younger sister who could do no wrong in our parents' eyes. I was the reliable one, the quiet one, the one who worked 2 jobs through college so no one else had to worry. When my father got sick, I was the one who drove him to appointments. When my mother needed help with the bills, I sent money without being asked. I thought love was proven by showing up. Until the day I had nowhere left to go. It started with the kind of ordinary heartbreak that turns ordinary lives upside down. My husband of 6 years walked out. After telling me he had fallen out of love, the apartment we shared was in his name. The savings account was mostly empty because we had poured everything into his new business idea that never took off. Within 2 weeks, I was packing what little belonged to me into 2 suitcases and a cardboard box. My job at the marketing firm had already cut hours. Rent was due. My phone was lighting up with messages from the landlord. So I did what any daughter would do. I called home. My mother answered on the 3rd ring. I could hear the television in the background and the clink of dishes. I explained everything in a steady voice that I forced to stay calm. I told her I just needed a place to sleep for a few weeks while I sorted things out. A couch, a corner of the floor, anything. There was a long pause. Then I heard her call out to my father and my brother. Alina says she's got nowhere to go. Can you believe it? I heard the laughter start. First my brother's low chuckle. Then my father's dry snort. My sister's voice came through the speaker next, bright and amused. What did she do this time? Spend all her money on another one of her little projects. I stood in the parking lot of a grocery store, rain soaking through my coat, phone pressed to my ear, and listened to the people who raised me laugh at the fact that I was homeless. My mother finally spoke again, still half laughing. Honey, you know how small the house is, and your brother just moved back with his girlfriend. There's simply no room. You'll figure it out. You always do. Then she hung up. I sat in my car until the windows fogged over. I remember pressing my forehead against the steering wheel and feeling something inside me go completely still. Not broken yet, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before a storm. That night, I slept in the backseat of my car behind a 24-hour diner. The next night, I found a cheap motel that took cash by the night. The nights after that blurred together, couch surfing with distant acquaintances who eventually grew tired of me. Long shifts at a temporary warehouse job that paid just enough for gas and a locker. At the gym where I showered, I sold most of what I owned. I stopped answering calls from anyone who shared my last name. But what I didn't know that day, standing in the rain with their laughter still ringing in my ears, was that the lowest point of my life was also the beginning of something none of them would ever see coming. I had lost everything they thought mattered. And in that empty space, I was about to build a life they would one day beg to be part of again. 18 months. That was all it took for the people who laughed at me to stop recognizing the woman standing in front of them. The first month after they turned me away felt like walking through thick fog. Every morning I woke up with the same tight feeling in my chest, the same question looping in my head. How did I end up here? I had done everything right. I had been the good daughter, the reliable sister, the one who never asked for much. And when I finally needed something, just a roof, just a little time, they had looked at me like I was a burden they couldn't wait to set down. I found a temporary job loading boxes in a distribution center on the night shift. The work was hard on my body, but it kept my mind quiet. I rented a tiny room in a shared house from a woman named Rosa, who asked no questions as long as the rent was on time. The room had a single bed, a cracked window, and a closet that smelled like old wood. It was enough. At first, I still hoped they would call. I kept my phone charged and checked it more times than I want to admit. Once, late at night, my sister sent a message. "Mom said you're living in some random house now. Don't come asking us for money when things get worse." I stared at the words until the screen went dark. Then I deleted the thread. The betrayal didn't arrive all at once. It came in small, sharp pieces. My brother's birthday party happened without an invitation. My father's retirement celebration was posted all over social media, smiling faces, cake, speeches about families sticking together. No one mentioned the daughter who wasn't there. When I finally gathered the courage to message my mother on her birthday, she replied 3 days later with a photo of a new living room set and the words, "We're doing fine. Hope you are too." That was when something inside me shifted. The sadness didn't disappear, but it stopped being the only thing I felt. Underneath it, a quieter emotion began to grow, something harder, something that refused to keep begging for a place at a table that had already pushed me away. I started waking up earlier. Instead of scrolling through old family photos, I opened free online courses, marketing, digital design, small business basics. I had always been good with ideas. I just never had the space or the courage to chase them when I was busy, being the reliable one for everyone else. Now there was no one left to take care of but myself. I took every extra shift I could get. I lived on the cheapest food I could find. I walked instead of driving whenever possible. Every dollar I saved went into a separate account. I labeled future. It wasn't much at first, but it grew. 6 months in, I launched a small online service, helping local businesses with simple branding and social media graphics. I worked from the corner of my tiny room with a second-hand laptop. The first client paid me $40. I cried when the money hit my account, not because it was a lot, but because it was mine. No one could take it. No one could laugh at it. By the 9th month, the little side work had become steady enough that I quit the warehouse job. I moved into a small studio apartment with actual windows and a kitchen I could cook in. I still didn't tell my family. Part of me wanted them to keep believing I was still the girl sleeping in her car. Another part of me simply didn't care what they believed anymore. The hardest nights were the ones when loneliness pressed in. I would sit on the floor of my new place and remember every birthday I had planned for them, every late-night drive to pick someone up, every quiet sacrifice that had never been noticed. The anger would rise, hot and heavy, and I would have to remind myself that revenge was not the point. Survival was. Becoming someone I could respect was. I kept going. I took on more clients. I learned how to price my work properly. I started saying no to people who tried to undervalue what I offered. Slowly, the woman who had once apologized for existing began to stand a little taller. One evening, about a year after that rainy phone call, I received a message from an old college friend who had seen my work online. She offered me a contract with a growing company, real money, real responsibility. I accepted. Within weeks, my income had tripled. I hired a part-time assistant. I bought a proper desk. I started sleeping through the night without the old tightness in my chest. Still, I never reached out to my family. Their silence had become its own kind of answer. And every time I felt the old ache of missing them, I looked around at the life I was building with my own 2 hands and reminded myself, they had laughed when I had nothing. They did not get to claim a seat at the table. Now that something was finally growing, the shift from pain to strength didn't happen in one dramatic moment. It happened in 100 small decisions, choosing to work instead of spiral, choosing to save instead of spend, choosing to believe that the version of me they had discarded was not the only version that existed. By the time 15 months had passed, I no longer recognized the woman who had once begged for a couch to sleep on. And I was only just getting started. 18 months to the day after that phone call in the rain, my phone rang with a number I had not saved but still recognized. My mother's voice came through, thinner than I remembered, almost careful. "Alina, we need to talk." I was standing in the bright, open office I now leased for my growing design agency. 2 employees were working at desks behind me. A new client contract sat, unsigned, on the table in front of me. Worth more in 1 month than I used to make in 6. I looked out the window at the city skyline and answered calmly, "I'm listening." She told me my father had been unwell. Medical bills were stacking up. My brother's business had failed. The house was at risk. They had tried everything. They had nowhere else to turn. I listened without interrupting. When she finished, the silence stretched long enough that I heard her breathing change. "You laughed," I said quietly. "When I had nowhere to go, you laughed. You told me there was no room. You posted pictures of family celebrations I wasn't invited to. You let me sleep in my car while you bought new furniture." She started to cry. Real tears this time, not the performative kind. My father took the phone and tried to speak, his voice rough. My brother sent a long message the same afternoon, full of excuses and sudden apologies. My sister called 3 times in 1 hour. They begged. They asked for money. They asked for a place to stay if things got worse. They asked me to come home for Sunday dinner like nothing had happened. They said they had always loved me. They said they had been worried. They said they didn't realize how bad things had gotten for me. I let them talk. I let every word land. And when they finished, I told them the truth without raising my voice. "I built this life without any of you. I slept in my car. I worked nights. I taught myself everything I needed. The woman you laughed at no longer exists. I will not be handing you the keys to what I created while I was alone. If you need help finding resources, I can point you toward them, but you will not take from me what you once refused to give." I hung up. They kept calling for weeks. Some messages were angry. Some were pleading. One from my mother simply said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know." I read every word and answered none of them. The silence I gave them was the same silence they had once given me. Only this time it was a choice, not a rejection born of helplessness. A few months later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that they had managed to stabilize things on their own. My father recovered. My brother found work. The house was saved by a refinancing they should have done years earlier. Life continued for them, just as it had continued for me. I did not celebrate their struggle. I did not need to. The real victory had never been about watching them fall. It had been about standing up when no one else would stand with me. Now, when I walk into my office each morning, I sometimes pause at the door and remember that rainy parking lot, the sound of their laughter, the weight of 2 suitcases and a future that looked completely empty. I remember how small I felt. And then I look at the life that grew from that emptiness: clients who trust my work, a team that respects me, a quiet apartment filled with light, and a heart that no longer waits for permission to take up space. The moral is simple, and I carry it with me every day. Family is not always the people who share your blood. Sometimes the people who are supposed to catch you are the ones who let you fall. And when that happens, you do not have to stay on the ground waiting for them to change their minds. You can get up. You can build. You can become someone they no longer recognize, not out of bitterness, but out of the quiet, steady decision to value yourself when no one else would. I no longer need them to beg. I no longer need them to apologize. The only approval that matters now is the one I give myself each morning when I choose to keep going. And that, more than any amount of money or any moment of satisfaction, is the real ending of this story. I was left with nowhere to go. 18 months later, I had built a life no one could take from me. And that is enough.